What's up, everybody? Welcome back to your favorite New York Jets subscription podcast, Badlands. I'm your host, Joe Caporoso, joined as always by Connor Rogers. Week 2 of the league year, fresh off recording an extra long War Room where we answered a gazillion questions from the Discord about the NFL draft, Jets media, Connor's routine, and a few other things. So if you haven't upgraded yet, upgrade to War Room. You get a bunch more content. You're going to get the draft guide. You definitely don't want to miss the draft guide at this time of the year. You'll also get an early jump on all of our merch and plenty of other good stuff. We got a ton to talk about. It's going to be a busy week, and I feel like we're going to be sitting in this chair again 2 or 3 more times at some point for the weekend hits. So, Connor, how you doing? How you feeling?
Good, man. Exciting beginning to wave 2. Mike Williams set to visit. I'm sure he will not be. Jadeveon Clowney set to visit. I'm sure they will not be the last big names to come through Florham Park. And, obviously the Jets probably feeling pretty good after signing 3 starting offensive linemen. Now the conversations around the draft got a lot more fun, a lot more interesting. I've made my pick for them on NBCSports.com with my latest mock draft that I think is, my propaganda I've definitely been raising.
I like the agenda. Get it out there.
The agenda is absolutely out there, but no, I'm with you. I think we'll be back on the mic at some point this week for another signing that could make a pretty big impact on this team. That's clearly in on the market of 1 to 2 year deals. Let's load up. Let's try to win right now.
So I talked about this a little bit on Monday Coffee. I'm pretty bullish on Mike Williams and the swing for Mike Williams. And here's why. I think if they don't get him, they're going to pivot to signing Odell. And I think Odell, if he ends up being an okay number 3 receiver for you next year, you're happy, and that's probably what you're paying him for. So while I think Mike Williams could be a risk and could be banged up, there is a world where you get 14 games, 800 yards, and 7 touchdowns from him, and it's a legitimate wide receiver 2 level of production. And that size and that skill set opposite Garrett Wilson gets me excited, where it keeps that much more optionality with the 10th overall pick, which they still have. They still have to consider offensive line, like in your latest mock. They still are going to need to consider receiver. It's actually genuinely going to be what is the best player on your board between pass catcher and offensive lineman, while maybe also considering some trade down options. There are some rumblings the Jets could be sniffing around the Ayuk market. I don't think they're going to be in on T. Higgins. Williams, if you can get him and then, add another piece in the draft, that feels like the route to a very exciting top 3. And I don't care if there's redundancy and size and style of game with Odunze and Brian Thomas, who are the main 2 guys who I think would be there if you were taking a receiver at 10, or Bowers, although it feels like, and maybe I'm just looking at the wrong parts of Twitter, but it feels like Bowers' stock has dropped a bit over the past month or so. And I don't know if that's fair or if that's unwise. I'm getting some Dallas Clark comps thrown at me in the Discord versus George Kittle.
He need more gloves.
So, for me, I would be very excited, independent of what happens with Mike Williams. I would be very excited with the Dunze, Thomas, or Bowers, because I want as many pass catchers and guys who can score touchdowns. Talk through these 5 pass catchers who we'll be talking about, it feels like. That's on the veteran side, that's Mike Williams. That's Odell Beckham Jr. I feel like the Boyd stuff probably isn't happening at this point. We just haven't heard a lot about it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they signed him. And then, for the rookies, can Odunze be there at 10? If not, is Thomas worth it at 10? And is Bowers better than both of them? And they just take him at 10 and make it work. How does this all piece together? Because we feel good about the offensive line. But as we're recording this, the Jets' top 3 receivers, besides Garrett Wilson, are soccer player Al Lazard, return specialist Xavier Gibson, and no one likes Jason Brownlee more than us, but we need more here. Project.
Yeah. I mean, when a UDFA makes the team, if he can stick as a 5th wide receiver, that's a win. So you got to have perspective. Okay, so let's work backwards on this. Bowers is better than both of those receivers, Odunze and Brian Thomas Jr. I have him as the 5th overall player in this draft. Now, the ceiling with Thomas Jr. is insane to me. I mean, the size, the speed, his acrobatic nature on contested situations. There is a lot to love with him. I have him as a top 12 player in the draft, so he's not a reach at 10 at all. Now, here's the thing I will clarify. I don't feel good about the offensive line. I feel much better about the offensive line. We were joking on War Room, but really not joking at all. The last time Tyron Smith played a full season. And let me be very clear. I am very happy the Jets signed Tyron Smith. I thought it was the most important lever they could pull after, mishandling this position for how long and needing somebody that can play and protect Aaron Rodgers. Tyron Smith played 16 games in 2015. So even through all pro seasons, like 16 and 2023, he played 13 games those years. 2017 through 2019, all Pro Bowl seasons, 13 games. 2 in 2020, 11 in 2021, 4 in 2022. Tyron Smith is probably going to miss time this year. And that's something that the Jets will have to take into account. Morgan Moses is 33. We love Morgan Moses. He's a big guy, getting older. He might miss some time. You can get rolled up on. It happens. He's been one of the true models of reliability in the NFL at the position. But these things happen. Now, if they brought in Bakhtiari, can the combo of Tyron Smith and Bakhtiari get you through the season? There's a chance. There's definitely a chance. And it's more upside insurance compared to Carter Warren. But obviously the floor is the injury. So I'm very happy that they pulled the levers on the offensive line that they needed to pull. But I wouldn't say I feel good about it across the stress and length of an NFL season. Not to mention, do we want to be sitting here next year and be like, damn, both the Jets offensive tackles went to free agency again?
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Here we are again.
So, yeah. That's right. Go ahead, Joe.
No, I said there's still work to be done.
Right. And it's okay.
Yeah,
that's okay. There's only so much you can do when you have needs like this. So that kind of takes me to and let's be fair, if they sign Mike Williams, which would be fun, even coming off the ACL, where a lot of guys aren't, as productive, of course, coming off an ACL, I still think it's, once again, a lever you can pull that helps the team and is better than what's left on the market. It's going to be a one-year deal if they get him. I'm very curious if Mike Williams will prioritize playing with Aaron Rodgers and wanting to win with the Jets, or what I presumably feel like will be a higher offer from the Panthers and maybe a higher offer from the Steelers, although I don't know. Those just seem like safe assumptions. Yeah. So, because we weren't confident on Tyron, because we're like, the Chiefs will probably pay him more than the Jets or something like that. And the Jets got him for only $6.5 million guaranteed with a lot of incentives. That was good business. So the thing is, if they sign Mike Williams, then you feel much better about the offensive line and much better about wide receiver. But when you look at 2025, you're looking at it and going, there's still long-term cornerstones that need to be here. That was the thought with drafting Mekhi Becton. That was the thought with drafting Denzel Mims and Elijah Moore. Like, that's always the thought, is how do we get in-house cornerstones that are going to be here for more than a year or two? And the Jets still need to keep that in mind on the offensive line. They still need to keep that in mind at pass catcher. And how they balance this and for the rest of free agency and how they balance what falls to them at 10 is the key thing to watch now.
So we move past pass catcher, which is still a major need. And their top need right now, I would still say offensive line is right there. We know they're going to look at Clowney this week. We know their front seven needs help. Even in a great scenario where Will McDonald and Jermaine Johnson are better and Kinlaw lives up to his elaborate void year contract, they have 16 and a half sacks to make up between Huff and Quentin Jefferson. So, all right, let's say you get 4 or 5 from McDonald. Let's say you get 4 from Kinlaw. And let's say you get, an extra 1 or 2 from Jermaine. You still got another 6 sacks to find. And Clowney could be that guy. He's not a traditional edge rusher in the way that Huff was, kind of maybe more of a JFM kind of move around, but coming off a productive year. He's kind of been a mercenary in recent years, bouncing all over the place, but you know what you're getting. I know Dan is ecstatic at the thought of Clowney, Kinlaw, JFM, Quinnen, Sal Thomas.
It is fun.
Moving around.
Thomas thrown in
while Michael Clemens is inactive because he's not good, all bouncing around. If they don't get Clowney, Calais Campbell, is that a name we could hear again? We know he almost signed with the Jets last year. In terms of the Leonard Floyd, Uche, those guys kind of are all gone. Maybe that ends up being a draft thing, unless they're going to trade for one of the Eagles players, which I don't think is going to happen. So it seems like they're going to go
foolish too, right? If you let Bryce Huff go to the Eagles at 25 years old, but then you traded for one of their guys, it's not a good.
Doesn't feel right. So it feels like they're going to try to go bigger up front and, just load up with the size and get after the quarterback that way, which may be able to work. Edge will be a position that I'm sure they will now draft at some point. Hopefully not too early. All the Dallas Turner jokes aside in our Discord and on Twitter. How do you build this front seven now? And is Clowney has been around for a long time now. And I feel like we've discussed him at least 2 or 3 times throughout his career. Is that the best answer at the moment?
Right. So when you look at Clowney, you're right. Mercenary is the way to describe it. Another guy, will he just take every last dollar? If so, why would the Jets be the highest offer? Although they do spend quite large on defense out of nowhere. I mean, Kinlaw, by the way, the contract, everybody was like, oh, Jets fans flipped out over this, and now look at it. The money's just spread out. We need to stop, basic accounting. I'm begging people to do basic accounting. If you have a credit card, you have experience to this.
Joe Douglas doesn't have to pay that credit card in a few years. He's not worried about it.
Right. If you buy a car and you put down, I don't know, say 10 grand on your credit card in the first month, yeah, sure, you could pay off the 2 grand and then keep kicking money around. Like a basic accounting, the Jets are they are just spreading money because with the NFL revenue, the cap explodes every single year, where you're playing percentages of okay, if our in-house guys are projecting the cap to go up $14 million next year, well, what is Javon Kinlaw's $4 million on the books next year gonna do to us? It doesn't matter. They will not be living in that world, or should not be living in that world, when the day comes that Garrett Wilson is maybe the highest paid receiver in football. Sauce Gardner will be the highest paid corner in football. Michael Carter could be the highest paid slot in football. The bill is going to come due for a lot of their good draft picks, where you cannot be playing in the world of, okay, we're just going to have $20 to $30 million in void money on our cap every single year. So it's fine now. I say fine. It's not ideal, because it goes back to my rant of the Carl Lawson and tight end money and all this stupid money they have on the books this year that could have equated to just bringing back Bryce Huff. But I will not do this to people today on this podcast. I promise I will get over it eventually. Back to Clowney. So, I mean, if he's going to sign a deal that's, I don't know, $6 million guaranteed, but it can go up to $9 to $10 million in incentives on a 1 year, Jets are probably all over that. But if he's looking to go get every last dollar, I'm sure somebody will offer him more. Now, for Clowney, what's interesting is he is a guy that I think wisely keeps scheme and landing spot in mind, so he can kind of do this every year. I mean, when you look at Clowney, he just played his age 30 season, and you can argue that it was his best season as a pro. Yeah. I mean, he tied his career high in sacks with 9.5. He was really good against the run. It just feels like him going to Baltimore for that 1 year is going to get him another almost double-digit $1 million payday. So the Jets have that in their favor, because pass rushers, front seven players, they love Robert Saleh's scheme. I mean, let's be fit. They really do. So maybe that weighs on his mind, where, say hypothetically, and we'll use the Panthers because they're an easy example to use all the time here. So the Panthers are like, hey, Clowney, we'll give you $9 million guaranteed, and it can go up to 11 incentives. And the Jets are like, we'll give you $6 million guaranteed and go up to $9 million incentives. Clowney might look at that and go, well, I have a better chance to hit my incentives with the Jets. And if I have another 9 sacks with the Jets, I'm going to get $10 million again the following year, where if the Panthers defense stinks and I have 3 sacks and I don't hit my incentives, maybe I'm looking at $3 to $4 million next year. This is just kind of things that mercenaries have to weigh. And I think Clowney is, kind of figured this out at this point right now. So the Jets, they got a shot at that one. We'll ultimately see where he thinks, what makes sense for him. But it matters a lot too. I've had conversations with random people on Twitter, as Chase Young just went to the Saints on a fully guaranteed $13 million 1 year deal. So, and by the way, Chase Young, you watch that. The player on tape is a much different player than the name reputation right now. I cannot believe the Saints gave him a $13 million fully guaranteed deal. They needed a pass rusher, but that kind of shows you Clowney is twice the player Chase Young is. Twice the player. He is 100 times better against the run, and he doesn't have the same upside as a pass rusher as Chase Young, but he's a better pass rusher today.
Yeah.
So maybe Clowney will be 10 million guaranteed, and that would probably take the Jets out of it. We'll see. This is good timing, by the way, as we're talking about Clowney, that this came through the feed. So ultimately, it's a big need for the Jets. It's not one that I think they can find in the draft right now because this guy has to play this year. And with Clowney, the last trickle effect of it is he's so good against the run that JFM and Clowney on early downs is a nightmare to run against. And it actually sets Will McDonald up for the most success, where McDonald legitimately is the new Bryce Huff, where it's like, okay, 3rd and 9, like teams in shotgun with 4 wide receivers on the field. Will McDonald, you're on an island with the right tackle who could be a backup. Your speed and ability across the face, like it's going to play here. You're going to be set up for success rather than, hey, Will McDonald, you're out there on 1st and 10. You got a tight end over you. You're getting double teamed on the edge. You're getting absolutely demolished. This has like longer ramifications than just Clowney's a good player. I think it helps everybody in the front 7. This might be crazy to me. This is dangerous. I think if I had to pick, and I know your answer is different, I might pick signing